is MoneyShift in the morning? Yeah, it's still morning. It's like brunch. I'm on the East Coast over here, but today, guys, we have ourselves a freaking episode. Holy cow. We are working with so much car news today. It's going to make your head spin. In fact, I started making the show notes and everything for today's show at like 9:30 a.m. And I just got done right now. That is how long, that is how much news, that is how much things that we have to cover today. There's so much to talk about. And I could not be more excited to bring it all to you guys. So what we're going to do is what we always do is we're going to hit that share button and then we will get underway. Copy link. I don't know if you guys have this sometimes where I touch the I have like one of these mouse pads, right, for the wrist. And for whatever reason, my hand, it just doesn't like to sit on it. And the gaming mouse is just very slow to respond. All right. We hit that share button. We're going to let some folks funnel in here. Let's see what happens when you click this link. Okay, nice. All right, perfect. I'm going to turn this up a little bit. I think the music is good. Amazing. Let's see what we got going on here. We're going live as well on Twitch for one of the first times in recent history, so let's see how that is going. Says we're streaming. You love that. Money shift. Yeah, all right. Cool. Awesome. Well, shall we get into it? I think we shall. I have to flick on the chat box. Perfect. All right, perfect. Let's get it going. The first car that we're going to be talking about today is this guy right here. This is the Ineos Grenadier, whatever. And I know the first thing you guys are thinking is, that looks oddly enough like a Land Rover Defender, and you are totally right. This company was actually sued by JLR over the design of this vehicle. They promptly won that lawsuit and were allowed to continue using this design, but they finally revealed the interior for their newest SUV. But before they do, let me just level set and give you guys a reminder of what you're looking at. So this is a company out of Europe. This is leveraging straight 6 BMW power, whether you get it in gas or diesel. Permanent all-wheel drive with a 2-speed transfer case. This thing has 3 differentials, e-lockers on the front and rear with a mechanical locker in the center. That B58 engine is good for 281 horsepower, 332 pound-feet of torque. What up, Andy? Strap in. We got a long episode today. Welcome, my man. 281 horsepower, 332 pound-feet of torque. But the most important thing about today's announcement with the oh my God, I have such a hard time saying this car's name. Grenadier. Okay. The newest thing with this car is the interior. These shots right here. And I think the interior is so damn interesting because even though this car is a 2021, the interior looks like it was ripped from the 90s, but with the right things switched to 2021. So you have things like a 12.3-inch touchscreen with Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, but you also have tons of toggle switches for the heated seats, for the windows, for the HVAC, for the steering wheel controls. You have manual AC vents in the center, right? It looks like it's an interior from the 90s, but it has everything you need, every modern touch. Shout out to Peter with the like as well. Welcome, my man. Thank you for joining. Thank you for tuning in. So it has all of the classic features that you want, right? The tactileness of the buttons in the center. If you look back in the interior shot, there's also a bevy of buttons above, right? Just like the Bronco. All right, we're back. Sorry about that, guys. I bumped the microphone there. But so it's got so many switches and buttons, and it has all that Apple CarPlay, and it has the Land Rover Defender looks that everyone loves, and you can get it in pickup truck form as well. The Grenadier is here, and it's coming to play. It's unsure if this is going to be available in the States, but I hope it will be. This thing has Recaro seats, 2,000 watt AC converter to juice up your electrical tools, glass roof panels that you see there above to sort of give the car more of an open air environment, more so than usual in these types of machines. But super excited to see more details come out about the Grenadier, including the price and whether it'll be available in the States. I'm assuming it will be, because I don't know if this is the same for you guys, but I've been seeing tons and tons of ads for this vehicle. So hopefully it does actually come to the United States. Andy says that dash array. Yeah, it's so cool, man. They did a really good job with the interior. I love how like it is very, very classic, but in the same vein, it is also very modern, exactly where you'd want it to be, right? Like you want that Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is what that big 12-inch screen gives you, but you also love the buttons. You love the ruggedness of those, stain-resistant Recaro seats, etc., etc. So continuing on, we're looking at this Genesis. Genesis unveiled this G80 a while ago, and they've even since unveiled an electric variant. But the car that we're looking at right now is the Genesis G80 Sport. Now, this is so far to date the most athletic-oriented version of a Genesis product, but apparently more is coming. But either way, this model is pretty spicy. What you're looking at is a car that has unique bumpers, front, rear, and unique side skirts. This car also has unique wheels, which you might recognize from the GV70 Sport, this sort of like quilted diamond design on this 5-spoke wheel, which looks really, really nice. Red calipers in the front, black calipers in the rear, and most notably an interior with a 3-spoke steering wheel. If you don't like that big center horn button that Genesis gives you with the 2-spoke lineup, you pretty much have to go Sport to get that 3-spoke design. In addition to that, most of the G80 Sports will be powered by a 3.5-liter twin-turbo 6. That makes 375 horsepower, 391 pound-feet of torque, in addition to the different front bumpers with bigger vents, 20-inch wheels, red calipers, 3-spoke steering wheel. You also get real carbon fiber and aluminum finishes on the inside. Overall excited. I mean, I think it's interesting to see how this design that is definitely luxury first looks as it gets progressively sportier. Genesis has talked about unleashing an even sportier variant of the G80 that could go head-to-head with something like an M5, and it would be interesting to see what that would look like. But as of right now, this is the sportiest G80 that you can get. I don't know if it looks particularly sporty, right? There's still endless amounts of chrome in the front. Love the interior, love the 3-spoke steering wheel, love the carbon fiber, love the aluminum touches. I'm overall a big fan of this car, so it'll be interesting to see them in person and see it parked next to a regular G80, where you'll notice things like that front bumper design that is uniquely different. Shout out to Nico. Welcome, my man. We're moving on. Guys, we're not even a quarter of the way with the news, and as we go on, the topics will get longer and longer, which I'm excited about. This is definitely something that a lot of folks won't be happy that we're missing out on. I know if John is in the audience, he will definitely agree. What you guys are looking at right here is the Volkswagen Golf R variant, and it is effectively the station wagon version of the hot hatch that we know and love here in the States, and that is coming remarkably soon. So what you guys are looking at is a 2.0-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine making 315 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque. This car is 4-motion all-wheel drive with drift mode. This is a wagon with drift mode. That's not an E63 AMG. Shout out to Michael with the like as well. Welcome, welcome. Nico says, angry wants. Yeah, I agree. This thing is capable of 0 to 60 in 4.9 seconds, which is just 0.2 slower than the claimed time for the hatchback. Now, the wagon is very wagony. meaning it gets 22 cubic feet of space with the rear seats up, but you put those rear seats down, you're looking at nearly 60 cubic feet of space, which is on par or exceeds most SUVs, which is wild. And if the Golf R hatchback is any inclination as to what we can expect for the performance figures for this car, you should expect something pretty spicy, because the Golf R hatch, the regular Golf that we're going to be getting here in the States, is coming to play. That thing is fast. CarWow and other sites have drag raced it against pretty much everything, including all its competition, and it's dominated it. So for this wagon to have all the same features, it's going to be pretty spicy. Michael says, I'm giving serious consideration to an R when the 22s come out. It would be quite the shift from my A7. It certainly would be in terms of size. Even in terms of luxury to a degree, but I will say, and I'm sure you've been in Volkswagens, being in the Audi space for a bit, but they're screwed together really damn well, Michael. You know, like, they do an incredible job at putting these cars together, and the Golf R is the top, the peak, the pinnacle of that, right? It's the most expensive of the cheap, you know. This car is, this one specifically is definitely going to be expensive, for sure. Nico says the redesign makes the car look so much more expensive. They killed on all the new cars. See, I'm going to be honest with you guys. I wasn't a fan of the Golf redesign at first. When it first came out, I didn't like it. I thought the interior was nice. I'm a big fan of these seats. I'm a big fan of the infotainment, big fan of the center stack. Like, I love all of this. Like, this photo that you guys are seeing right now, love it. I think it's a big improvement over the current generation Golf stuff. What I didn't necessarily like was the exterior design. I thought it was droopy. I thought it was sad. I thought it was boring. I still kind of think that. I think the MK7.5, which is the current generation Golf, is like a really, really good looking thing. Like, they smashed that design out of the park, and it would be tough to sort of beat that. But as I start to see more designs like this Golf R Sport Wagon with these nice wheels and this beautiful lines, like, I'm starting to sort of come around. I don't know if I'll say that I'll like it more than the MK 7.5, but at least I don't think this is a failure like I sort of thought it was. And obviously it's a really, really big bummer that this thing is not coming to the United States. I mean, look, we all know the U.S. doesn't like wagons, and it kind of blows my mind as to why. I mean, I understand we like the high seating position, but in terms of practicality and driving dynamics, you're not going to get better than a wagon, right, for the space that it's able to provide. So it's a bit of a bummer that we don't get it, but at least we are getting the Golf R, so folks like Michael that are in the running can at the very least take a gander at it and maybe, just maybe, make the shift. Michael, you have to keep us updated on what comes down the pipeline for you if that move does go into place. Michael says, I'm good with the hatch and I love wagons. Yeah, man, me too. I agree with that. I think even still the hatchback design is more than enough for folks, right? Like, the practicality you get out of a Golf, the practicality you get out of a Civic hatch. We talked about the cubic feet numbers that trunk space provides and how it's on par, or actually exceeds most SUVs as well. Is more than enough. You know, I think it's just a looks thing, to be honest, as to why people don't like them. Because you look at even Ford, right? Ford kills the Fiesta, but they replace it with the EcoSport, which is a just as small thing, but it's just taller, you know? All right, let's move on. We got one last, what I'll call basic announcement, and then we start to take it up a notch. Shout out to Joe Scott coming in hot. Welcome, my man. Thank you for tuning in on this fine afternoon. So we got, like I said, we got one more basic announcement, and then we're kicking it up a notch. Where's Emerald Lagasse? Bah, you know what I mean? We're increasing the spice. We're getting things pretty crispy. So the last basic announcement that we have is the Kia Sportage. It has been fully unveiled, inside, outside. We know the details. We don't know specifically what we're getting here in the States, but we can make a couple inferences, and I'll go over those in just a second. Michael with the bam, bam. Man, Emerald Lagasse was one of the best on Food Network back in the day. So available in long wheelbase and short wheelbase trim. Long wheelbase just means that this car will have a 3-row configuration, likely in some Geos. The Kia Sportage will also be available with 2 engines, Number one, you're looking at a 2-liter turbo diesel that makes 183 horsepower and 307 pound-feet of torque. Not bad, Kia. Number two, a 1.6-liter turbo direct injected 4-cylinder engine. That engine makes 177 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. Now, the diesel is mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission, but the gasoline-powered one, the turbo, that 4-cylinder, that thing's mated to a 7-speed dual clutch, or in some Geos, a 6-speed manual. That's pretty cool. Obviously, we're not going to be getting that one in the States. If I had to guess, the model that we're going to be getting here in the States is just going to be the long wheelbase 1.6-liter turbocharged 4-cylinder engine, making 177 horsepower, 195 pound-feet of torque through a 7-speed dual clutch. You'll likely be able to get it in front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive here in the States. Joe says, I'm not sure if I like that front end. Feel like I'd have to see it in person for perspective. Yeah, it's definitely a jarring design for sure. I appreciate Kia for doing something totally different. This definitely doesn't look like other vehicles on the road. And I remember when we talked about this last time, one of the things that I noted on was that this was like one of this and the Mitsubishi Outlander, okay, are probably the closest things that we're going to be getting here in the States to a French car, meaning like a DS automobile, a Citroën, a Renault, a Peugeot, these like crazy eccentric designs that also carry that not only on the outside but the inside. This has all those features, right? If you were to cover up the Kia badging and tell me this was a Peugeot, I'd believe you, because it does resemble that similar style of design more so than it does anything in the States. And if we take it to the inside, things also get pretty interesting. What you're looking at there is a 12-inch touchscreen and a 12-inch instrument cluster that's curved, okay? Pretty awesome. Pretty cool. Overall, this Kia interior, at the very least, photographs really well. So it'll be interesting to see in person how that translates. But looking at this in photos, it gives me this like very like high-end feel. So shout out to Kia, whoever's taking these photos or producing these computer-generated images. They look damn good. But it does also have some luxury features. First for Kia is what they're calling an electric control suspension, which is a continuous damping that does it in real time. Think about it as something like a magnetic ride control that's constantly making adjustments to the dampening pressure in order to ensure as comfortable of a ride as possible. This is the first time that we've seen it actually in this SUV space, right? You got to remember, this thing competes with the RAV4, this thing competes with the CR-V, this thing competes with the Hyundai Tucson, and that technology just isn't in this segment. So Kia is definitely leading in a lot of respects, right? We're seeing things like a curved monitor. We're seeing things like this continuous damping control in the suspension, right? We're seeing things like a turbocharged 4-cylinder motor that makes 200 pound-feet of torque. Pretty cool. I wish we'd get that diesel, though. 300 pound-feet of torque in this thing would be pretty spicy. But I think Joe's right. I think this design is so out there in terms of what we're used to that we will need to see this in person. For me, especially the interior. This interior photograph's amazing. Like, look at these photos. If I was to cover that Kia badge both in the horn and on the bottom left there, that watermark, and tell you this was a Mercedes GLA, or tell you this was a BMW product, or tell you this was a Volvo or something like that, it wouldn't be stupid of you to think that I was telling you the truth, right? Because it does really look more upscale than anything we're used to from the brand, for sure. And it photographs, like I said, incredibly well. Shout out to Will Baranowski with the like. If you guys are watching and you're enjoying the stream, be sure to hit that like button, the follow button, comment, whatever you got to do, the subscribe button, all of that. It helps us grow here, and I appreciate Will, Joe, Nico, Andy, etc., Michael for tuning in and giving that like and that share. Thank you, guys. Joe says, I like the new Tucson. In photos, it's ho-hum, but in person, it looks good, the front end. Yeah, I totally agree. I actually liked it in photos, but I do agree that in person, it's sharp. And it gives me actually a lot of hope for the Santa Cruz, which is the pickup that spawned off the Tucson, right? That leverages that same unique front end design. It makes me think that car is going to look particularly very, very good. So definitely super excited for that. But let's as this one song fades out and another one comes in, let's kick this up a notch with some news. So I'm going to highlight you guys the cars that we have left so that you know, because any good TV show, any good channel, any good podcast gives you guys an agenda so that you guys know what's coming, right? There's no gotchas, there's no hooks, there's no whatever. Next, we're going to be talking about the new Lamborghini Aventador that just dropped this morning. Then we're going to be moving on to talking about the Rivian Amazon vans, BMW 2 Series, new cars from Lotus, the Rimac Bugatti partnership, and the Peugeot hypercar. So we have 6 pieces of news still left to cover, and all of these are going to be a lot more in-depth than what we've talked about up until this point. So like I said, 20 minutes in today, but who knows how long this could go. Probably see at least that hour mark, which I'm definitely excited about. And trying a little bit of a different time slot here. We don't usually go live around 11 o'clock. Usually we go live around 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, 8:30. So it'll be interesting to see like what differs around this time, if we're going to be bringing in different stuff. Joe says, and then we get into leaf blowers. Yeah, maybe this time we'll venture into the world of electric lawn equipment. Who knows if we'll have time for it. But I've definitely been checking that out. They make some ride-ons now that are electric, which is pretty rad. So as promised, let's talk about the Aventador. And I'm going to mute the music for 1 second because we got to have a moment of silence. This is the swan song for the Aventador. This is the end of a decade-long story that brought us multiple variants, multiple iterations, multiple flavors of what is one of the coolest cars of our generation. Now, as we kick the music back on, let's get into the details that make this the swan song. And is it something that's worth it? Is it worthy of the finale for the Aventador name? Michael says, don't make me go get the Husqvarna out of the garage. Go get it. Fire it up. We're talking small engines. Well, before we talk about small engines, let's talk about a big one. This is the Lamborghini Aventador LP780-4 Ultime. And they're only going to be making 600 of these. 350 of them are going to be coupes. 250 of them are going to be roadsters. Powering them, all the same. Powering the Ultime is a 6.5-liter V12 that revs to 8,700 RPM, makes 770 horsepower in 780-4 trim. And it makes 531 pound-feet of torque. That number is 10 horsepower more than the SVJ, and I believe like 90 over the regular S. So it is the most in the Lamborghini Aventador lineup. This thing weighs 55 pounds less than an Aventador S, which gives it a similar power to weight as an SVJ. That allows this thing to do 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds. Remember, that 6.5-liter V12 is mated to a 7-speed, single-clutch automated manual, okay? This is a single-clutch guy. It's been the same transmission for, the better part of a decade. Now, they've obviously greatly improved it over time, right? The shifts are quick, they're less violent, et cetera, et cetera. But at its core, it's still a single-clutch automated manual, okay? In addition to that, this thing has magnetic pushrod suspension, rear wheel steering, 6-piston carbon ceramic brakes in the front, 4-piston carbon ceramic brakes in the rear. This car features a new bumper with active splitters and flaps. This also has a rear active wing with 3 positions. Lamborghini is calling those positions, number 1, max performance, number 2, which probably means low downforce setting for maximum top speed. Number 2, maximum handling, so it'll probably have the highest attack angle. And number 3, closed, which is a function that I venture no Aventador Ultime owner will ever see. I think these are the only images you'll find of an Aventador Ultime with the wing down. I can pretty confidently say that. Now, coming in, one of the interesting things that I found over this Lamborghini sort of segment here was just the weight number. Now, the Aventador LP780-4 Ultime, which, by the way, can we just fix these names? Why can't they just call this Aventador like Finale or something? Anyway. The coupe weighs 3,417 pounds, and the Roadster weighs 3,500 pounds. Now, to put that in perspective, okay, a brand new Toyota Supra with the inline six weighs 3,400 pounds. So we're talking about, okay, an inline six turbo rear wheel drive coupe from Toyota that weighs just as much as a 6.5 liter naturally aspirated V12 bodied thing that is the Lamborghini Aventador. Now, and if you guys have ever seen one of these in person, you'll know, excuse my language, but these things are fucking huge, right? The Aventador is a really big thing. So to make that be the same weight as a Supra is pretty nuts. Like, pretty nuts. Pretty nuts. Joe says, what's the future for the V12 with Lambo? They going to go hybrid like everyone else, or are they going to fight the trend and keep the legacy of the V12 alive? That's a great question, Joe. Now, their CEO actually recently addressed that. The Aventador replacement is coming in 2022. Apparently, it's still going to be a V12, but it'll just feature a hybrid powertrain to sort of like ease people in to that notion that a top spec Lamborghini can be a hybrid. So I don't know if it's going to be the same 6.5 liter V12 or if it's going to be a newer V12, but they've confirmed that it'll retain a naturally aspirated V12 and just have a hybrid element to it. What they're hoping is that the electric power forgoes the need to sort of boost it in order to increase performance, right? You have the instant torque of an electric motor, which hopefully adds more speed to the Aventador, thus not needing any sort of additional boost to that naturally aspirated V12. They did hint that they were considering some sort of four-wheel drive system like the Ferrari SF90, where you could put electric motors in the front wheels and have the gas engine powering the rear wheels, kind of like what the NSX does as well. But what we do know, and what is 100% confirmed, is that it's going to be a V12 of some sort with electric power. If you look to other Lamborghini vehicles, the Lamborghini Cyan specifically has the V12 and a supercapacitor, which is in the gearbox, which gives just 30 horsepower. So it's, you know, not necessarily the most. I would probably, if I had to guess, if I had to put my money on this, I would say that what we see from Lamborghini is a sort of like plug-in hybrid type Aventador, where it can do like 10 miles or so on full electric power, and then after that it's just, you know, a naturally aspirated V12. And because it can do 10 to 15 miles on electric power, it gets a really good MPG rating, which allows them to like keep going, right? So that's where I think the next steps are going for this. I mean, Lamborghini currently is in their sort of final stages where they're trying to figure out what they're going to be doing, right? Because not only do they have to replace the Aventador next year, but also 24-25 is likely when the brand is going to be replacing the Huracan as well, and that is a V10, right? So their biggest challenge is strategy and what the future is going to be for the next generation of vehicles, what 2030 Lamborghinis are going to look like, and they're still finalizing what those plans are. You know, that said, they got the right leadership. Former Bugatti boss is a baller, Steven Winkelmann, the Lamborghini CEO. So we'll see what happens. We'll see what happens for sure. But I'm excited. I think that's the right move, right? Having a plug-in hybrid version of the Aventador where you're able to sort of get that, you know, fucking 15 miles or whatever of electric range, which, by the way, would still be more than enough for some folks that would just putt it out of their driveway and come back and not even fire on that gas engine, which could actually help for long-term value. Who knows, right? Who knows? But yeah, this is the Lamborghini Aventador LP780-4 Ultime, and it is the swan song for the Aventador. Moving on to something that is not the swan song and something that we're going to see way more of than the Lamborghini Aventador, Rivian. Let's talk a little bit of electric really quick before we get right back into gas. Now, those electric haters out there, don't worry, okay? This isn't, we're not going to full electric after this. We're just going to talk for a little bit, you and me, okay? We're going to, come on, bring it in. Bring it in. Let me bring it in here, okay? Let's have a small conversation. All right. When it comes to things like transportation, okay, like Amazon Prime, UPS, things like that, electric is probably the best solution. Right? It's the lowest maintenance cost. It's quieter. It's better for the environment overall. Okay. And companies like Rivian understood the need for a delivery van pretty early. This delivery van has been in development for the better part of the last 5 years. And CEO of Rivian, RJ Scaringe, excuse me if I'm pronouncing that wrong, he just posted some photos of the delivery vans being ready to be shipped off. Now, let's remember what the contract is for these cars. Rivian, Mark Van Booski with the like and the share. What is up, Mark? Hope things are going well with the new gig, my man. Welcome, welcome, welcome. Rivian is expected to produce at least 100,000 of these for Amazon alone. Howdy from work, just stopping by, my man. Hope it's going well. New gig. I think you're on week 3 or something like that. Hope it's going awesome. Rivian hopes to be producing the first 10,000 of these by 2022 and the remaining 90,000 for Amazon over the next 8 years. So right now they've produced, I think, about 10 of them, and they're going to be giving them to Amazon employees. You can see them right here. These are them in person. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 8 of them right here. They're going to be sent off, and they're going to start doing work, some hard testing, so that Rivian can make the changes it needs so that by 2022, when they start shipping these out, they're solid. So get used to this look, everybody, because this is the Amazon Prime van of the future. And if you think that this is vaporware, you're out your damn mind. Amazon invested $700 million into Rivian, and part of that was to produce these things that were up to Amazon spec, both in look, both in feature, both in driving, both in capability. Right? So these things are going to be there. These things are going to be everywhere, and they're going to be replacing all those Dodge ProMaster vans that you see the Prime vehicle people using today. I think they look terrific. I'm a big fan of the design overall. Now, we're not going to get too excited over how a van looks, but I love the lighting element that goes all the way around the top of the roof. I do like the front end of these as well. I think it's really unique that it has Prime written everywhere. This is, in fact, a Amazon labeled vehicle, right? The only place it says powered by Rivian is on the side skirt, but overall this thing only has Amazon and Prime logos all over the place. Okay, now let's move on to the final 3 vehicles. These are the 3 vehicles that we're going to be spending the most amount of time talking about, and it is because they are the most important. The first is the newest BMW 2 Series. Now, I'm going to venture to say, guys, that that this was a tough one for me, because oftentimes when I look at a vehicle, I try to take a second before I give impressions, right? Because sometimes the first thing that pops to mind is like, guys, this is really bad, or wow, this is actually really nice, or whatever that may be, right? Like your mind goes a bajillion miles a minute. And my first impression, yikes. It was really bad. But I've taken a second look, I've taken a third look, I've taken a fourth look, and my opinion is in the looks department. Just And I'm going to tell you why. When you look at this car from the rear 3/4 view, the view that we just saw, the rear, not so hot. That rear taillight design looks forced. It looks tacked on. It looks like the car is like they ripped off the 3M label and just stuck it on the back of the car. It doesn't look designed at all. But the front three-quarter view, this view right here, I like a lot. I actually think it looks really nice. This car doesn't have the 4 Series big grille. This car doesn't have any wild styling elements. But then you go to the back and you're like, how you ruined it. It doesn't look bad from the direct on view, but once you get to the side and you start to see the dimension of the taillight, that's where you lose me. But let's talk about the details of the 2 Series overall, because this is a pretty important vehicle for BMW. This is one of the few vehicles that a lot of people just universally praised, regardless of their opinion of the brand, right? You sort of, whether you hated BMW, liked BMW, whether you liked their move that they made with the M4 or M3, whether you liked the iX, the i4, whatever, you liked the 2 Series. The 2 Series was always that one where you were like, you know, small, rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. You could get it in a manual, fun, balanced. It felt like a modern interpretation of what the classic M3 was. So it was always one of the favorite vehicles in the BMW lineup. So this is a pretty important vehicle for the BMW enthusiast. So let's talk about the differences between this generation 2 Series and the current generation 2 Series. The first thing we're going to talk about is size. This BMW 2 Series measures up at 179 inches in length, 72 inches in width, and 54 inches in height. Now, how does that compare to the current generation of 2 Series, the one that we know? Well, it's 4 inches longer, 2.6 inches wider, and 1 inch lower than the current generation. Add to that, a 2-inch longer wheelbase means that the rear passengers actually do get a little bit more room. Now, does that make it a place now that you actually want to be? Probably not, but the fact of the matter is, more room is welcome, okay? And this is still a relatively small vehicle. Even though it's 4 inches longer, the 2 Series in 2021 terms is a smaller vehicle. So 4 inches isn't going to change the game. It's not like this thing is all of a sudden becoming a 911 competitor or something like that. No, it's still a small compact coupe. But when we get into the details of the engines, this is where things get progressively pretty spicy. Now in the US, we're going to be getting 2 variants of the 2 Series. We're going to be getting a 230i and we're going to be getting an M240. Both of these cars will be available in rear-wheel drive and all-wheel drive. The 230 is a turbocharged. We did it. Yikes. 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine. That engine makes 255 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque. Now, if you recognize those numbers and those figures in that engine, you are correct. That is a similar engine to what you find in the 2-liter Supra today. In fact, it makes pretty much the exact same power figure. 255, 295 is the exact same power figure that is in the 2.0 Supra. Made it to an 8-speed automatic. This thing can do 5.5 seconds to 60, which is slower by about a half a second than the Supra. The Supra does it in 4.7. Now, the big dog here, okay, is the M240i. It's this purple guy that you see in these photos. This is a 3-liter twin-power turbo inline 6, which again is also the same engine found in the Z4 and the Supra. Now, in the Z4 and the Supra, in the Supra specifically, makes 382 horsepower, 368 pound-feet of torque. Now, in this car, it makes 382 horsepower, same number, 369 pound-feet of torque, so just a skosh more torque here in the M240 versus the Supra. Now, this thing is also mated to an 8-speed automatic transmission, rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. You can get this with an M Sport rear diff as well. This thing does 0 to 60 in 4.1 seconds, which if we want to quickly compare to the Supra does 0 to 60 in the mid to high threes. So you're looking at 3.7, 3.8-ish. So 0.3 slower, roughly. Now, if you're in Europe, you get this white one, which is a 220i that is a diesel, making 181 horsepower, 221 pound-feet of torque. There is a mild hybrid diesel version available as well, which bumps that torque figure up to 295 which is pretty cool. In addition to all of these, they made a lot of updates to the 2 Series, mainly coming in that interior. One of the biggest blockers to the 2 Series overall was its interior design. So they said, hey, why don't we take the 3 Series and copy pasta the interior and put it right in the 2, and that'll instantly be an improvement. And that's exactly what they did. There is a 12.3-inch instrument cluster up to a 10.25-inch instrument cluster available, infotainment available. Oddly enough, you get iDrive 7, not iDrive 8 in this vehicle. So even though it is brand new, you don't get the same system that you get in the new BMW iX. Standard in the United States will be things like dual zone climate, leather steering wheel, and power front seats. Because this is a BMW, everything else is optional. One of the interesting features that I learned is that this car actually also learns your routines. You can enable a feature where the car senses specific environments, locations, and parameters and just automatically does them. So if you drive into your garage and you always lower the window before you exit the vehicle, the car will sense that, and after a bit of you doing the same thing, it'll just do it for you. So when you drive into that garage, it'll lower that driver's window automatically, which is pretty interesting. Now, looking at the rear 3/4 from this view, it looks fine. It looks whatever. It doesn't look bad. So it'll be interesting to see, much like Joe mentioned earlier, how the Kia Sportage will look in person. It'll be interesting to see how this car translates to in person. Because like I said, I do actually really enjoy the front of this car. I think the front 3/4 view is fine. Like, it's nothing crazy. It's not overly aggressive. It's not, groundbreaking, but it's good. Like, it's overall good. Where the car lost me initially were those rear taillights, but looking at it from certain angles, I kind of buy into it again, but here we are. One of the interesting things that came out about this, though, is that BMW don't give a shit about your manual transmission in this car. Even though that was one of the hallmarks of the 2 Series, your ability to get a manual transmission, you cannot get that in this 2 Series as of yet. Maybe that changes with the M2, but for right now, you cannot get that in this car, which is a bit of a bummer. BMW says they also increased the torsional stiffness by 12%. But the most important thing to listen and learn about here is the price. If you're interested in one of these, or you're interested in a rear-wheel drive coupe, okay, it comes in at a pretty good price. Now, if I go to Toyota's website so we can quickly benchmark this car against the Supra, okay, let me go right to select a vehicle. Supra, amazing. Build. Okay. The 2-liter Supra, okay, comes in at an MSRP of $43,090, okay? The base version of this car with the same engine comes in at a base price of $36,000. Now, that $7,000 difference is likely attributed to a bunch of features that the Toyota provides stock that the BMW doesn't, as well as the fact that the Toyota is likely more sporty stock than the BMW is, but I'd be remiss if I didn't tell you guys what a similar engined, similar drivetrain layout vehicle came in at for a price. Now, if you step it up to the 3-liter, okay, the Supra's base price is $51,000. Again, both of these are relative bargains considering what the car is able to provide. $51,000 for 30 mpg on the highway and under 4 seconds to 60 is pretty awesome. But the BMW is $48,000 for a similar engine with nearly similar performance. So if you like the BMW design more, if you like the fact that you can have back seats in the BMW more, then you can save a couple G's by going M240i. So pretty interesting to note there. I don't know what you guys think about the design, but overall it'll be really interesting to see what BMW can do with this car and what, is this the true successor to the 2 Series, or is this another flop from the company in recent history, which hasn't been so hot. I mean, the M4 has been okay. People have in mind minded the M4. A lot of people have commented on the heaviness of the M4. It's a big, big, big gal. BMW also says they revised the suspension to incorporate a number of aluminum components, overall attempting to reduce the weight as much as possible. There is sport suspension as well, and an available adaptive M chassis with electronically controlled dampers. Because this is a BMW, you can certainly soup this up with whatever you want and price this thing out the jib. But overall, the base price of this car probably includes just enough features for you to get by. Now, what's interesting is a couple people have done some photoshops of this car to really alter the image, and I think it looks great with the headlights a little bigger. But anyway, let's move on to the car that I'm most excited to talk about today. Actually, the last three things are really exciting to me in general. I'm going to be honest with you guys, and if we have some time, we can check in a quick video as well. This is the swan song for the Lotus combustion engine. So we got two finales. We got two season finales, if you will, on today's podcast. We got the Lamborghini Aventador Ultime, and then we got this from Lotus. This is the Lotus Emira, okay? In just a second. Where did that come from? We all recognize that tone, but I don't know where it came from. Whatever. Okay, let's get into the details quickly about the Lotus Emira because it is pretty awesome. So again, this is the swan song for the combustion engine for the brand. After this car, everything will be electric. Managing Director Matt Wendell says the Emira is a game changer for Lotus. It is a milestone on our path to becoming a truly global performance brand. Alongside the Emira, Lotus plans to build an electrified SUV at this new plant in China. Lotus is also expanding its business from just selling cars that appeal to racing fans. They want to appeal to more folks than just the car people, right? But yeah, you got to remember where you started, and that's why they made this machine. This car, let's just get into the price quickly. Priced at less than £60,000, this car will cost $83,000 equivalent. As of right now, it's not going to be coming to the States. That could change with demand and intrigue, but $83,000 is where this car is priced. Now, if we look at its competition super duper quickly, as we just did with the BMW, the Cayman, okay, the Porsche Cayman, the 718 Cayman, starts at $70,000. So there's about a $15,000 difference. But the 911 starts at $100,000. And that's where this car sort of plays. This car plays right in the middle ground from the Cayman Boxster type deal and the 911 Plus type deal. This car plays right smack dab in the middle. And the same is true for the size. This car is a smidge smaller than the Lotus Evora, but with a longer wheelbase than a 911. So you see what we're working with here? So the overall size of the car is like a Lotus Evora, which if you've seen it in person is definitely a smaller car overall than something like a Porsche 911. But it punches right in between in terms of pricing. This car weighs 3,097 pounds and it has two engine choices. Two engine choices are available, and both of them are really, really exciting. The first is an AMG-sourced four-cylinder engine that makes 360 horsepower. You guys will recognize this engine because it's in the AMG 45 series vehicles like the CLA, like the GLA, like the A series. That same 2-liter turbo 4 engine that makes oodles and oodles of power in those cars is available in the base version of the Emira, and it'll make 360 horsepower. Now, if that's not enough, or if you want a calling card to the Lotus of old, you can opt for a Toyota V6 that is supercharged and makes 400 horsepower. It's the same engine that is available in the Toyota Camry. It's the same engine that's available in the Lotus Evora. So 400 horsepower or 360 horsepower are your options. Now, Car and Driver actually does assume that this car will be coming to the US. So it'll roughly be around $80,000. So that's exciting that we are getting it here in the States. But let's get into more details about this car. Now, if you want the Toyota engine, if you want for that 3.5 liter supercharged 6-cylinder, you can go for a manual or automatic. So this is one of the few cars under $100,000 that operates in this performance space that you can still get in a manual. You can't get it anymore with the Supra. You can't get it anymore with the Corvette. You still can for the Cayman, but who knows for how long. So Lotus also in the Emira will be doing the same thing. So that is very, 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 very exciting. Very, very exciting. So now, again, I'm sorry, I'm a little scatterbrained here, but I am really, really excited about this car, so I keep gravitating to different details. Looking back at those two motors in reference to their competition, that 2-liter Turbo 4 that makes 360 horsepower is more than the horsepower that is in the Cayman S. So if we look at the Cayman S base price, the Cayman S comes in at a base price of $72,000, so still at roughly around 8 to 10 grand more expensive than a Cayman. Lotus will also, oh my gosh, I'm sorry guys. No, I'm inundated with all of the details about this thing, and I just couldn't be more jazzed for it. Lotus says that both engines will gain more powerful derivatives over time, which means that the V6 might gain a plug-in hybrid variant, or the 4-cylinder might gain more power, but as it stands, 360 and 400 plus horse is more than enough for a 3,000-pound machine, especially when you can get it in a manual transmission. Now, Lotus hasn't given extensive specifications, but they say that the top spec of the Emira, which will be the V6, can accelerate from 0 to 60 in just 4.5 seconds, which, guys, is still fast. I know we live in a world where the Tesla Model S Plaid can do 0 to 60 in, a tenth of a second. Not actually, but it can do 0 to 60 in like just over 2, but 4.5 seconds is still plenty fast. So let's not forget that. In addition to this, this car also has hydraulic steering. Remember that? Remember the connection to the road that hydraulic steering gives you? Yeah, the Emira's got it. Okay. In addition to that, it also gives it a nice interior. This car has a 12.3-inch driver display. This car has a 10.5-inch Apple CarPlay Android Auto player, otherwise known as a digital display in the center. And, I know when you guys think Lotus, you think, relatively Spartan equipped, but I'll have you know that the Emira comes with some options. Stock, this thing gets cruise control. This is all in the Lotus press release, by the way. Stock, this thing gets adjustable seats, front and rear parking sensors, keyless go, auto dimming mirrors. They actually even said auto wipers, too, in the press release, which made me throw up. In addition, you will also be able to get the Lotus Emira with a Lotus driver's pack, which adds things like launch control, stiffer suspension, and different tires. This car promises to be one of the best driving vehicles on the market today, not just at its price point, but on the market today. Lotus is shooting high, and they made a beautiful thing to shoot high with. This car looks fantastic, and I think one of the things that plagued older Lotuses, Lotusi, if you will, was the fact that they looked kind of like kit cars, right? The older Elises, the older Exiges, the older Esprits, the older Evoras, whatever, they, when parked next to a Porsche, just didn't have the same gravitas. They didn't look as well screwed together as their Porsche counterparts. But now that changes. You look at this thing, you look at the interior of this car, it looks more than just what older Lotus is. It looks like something that's come into play. It looks like something that can pull some folks out of a Porsche and into a Lotus. Before, when you were buying a Lotus, you were making a lot of compromises for the sake of a good driving experience. Now it seems like you're getting the best of both worlds because they're giving you all of those features that you come to know and come to expect in that segment, but you never got in a Lotus before. Michael says adjustable seats. Wow. Yeah, exactly. To us, it's funny, right? You're coming from a Audi A7. I have, luxury cars outside, whatever. But like for Lotus, that's huge. That's huge. Ben says, talk about a late stream. What's up, my man? What is up, dude? Yeah, we're trying a different time slot today, but I will say one of the reasons that this time slot had to happen was because of the sheer amount of news. We've been live for about an hour, and I still have this and 2 more subjects left to talk about today. So there's been a lot going on. The July 4th weekend was one for the record books in terms of automotive news. So to quickly highlight, okay, we're looking at a $70,000 to $80,000 mid-engine machine. The 2 engines that are going to be available are either the 45 series AMG 2-liter 4-cylinder engine that makes 360 horsepower, or a 3.5-liter supercharged V6 Toyota engine that makes 400 horsepower. Now, if you get the Toyota engine, you can get it in a manual or an automatic. If you opt for the Mercedes engine, it's just automatic. This car has hydraulic steering. This car has Apple CarPlay, Android Auto. This car has leather interior. This car has cruise control, ambient lighting, all of this. And it looks damn good. I love the Cayman. But this looks damn good. Damn good. So congratulations to the fine folks at Lotus for making a positively mega thing. This thing is really, really awesome, guys. Like really, really awesome. Weighing in at 3,097 pounds, man. Ben says, how can you go wrong starting at 70K? I'm going to be honest, Ben. Even if this thing started at 90, I would still be in. Like, it has the performance, it has the looks, it has the interior, it has the weight, it has the size, it has everything that it needs, all the intangibles. There's no reason why this car shouldn't be where it is. Like this 70 to 80 price point that it's likely going to operate in puts it square in the wheelhouse of cars like the Cayman, cars like the Corvette. It's more expensive than the Supra, less expensive than the GTR, less expensive than the NSX, less expensive than the 911, et cetera, et cetera. It's just a really damn good price point. Like if Lotus was a baseball player, the home run they hit with this car would still be in the air. And if we have time at the end, we'll watch the Top Gear video where we can see this thing in action. They got the chance to drive it, look at it, touch it, play with it, right? Because you see these photos and you're like, okay, computer generated images, maybe. But no, this is the actual car, and seeing it in the metal is really, really nice. But let's move on because, guys, we don't have all day. Ben says, do you think this might dictate other manufacturers' pricing in the future, potentially depending on how the car sells? It's important to remember that the Cayman S, for which this car is a power rival to, comes in at like $72K. So it's not as if they're like blowing the doors off price-wise, right? This isn't like a Genesis that like undercuts a 5 Series by like 10, 20K. It's you know, reasonably priced. 70, 80K is 10, 20 more than a Cayman and 10, 20 less than a 911. It's not like a bargain. Like, this isn't a C8 Corvette that you can, you know, in theory get for 59K. You know what I mean? So I don't know if necessarily this is going to draw the needle for some folks. I think it's just Lotus making the right call with the pricing of the car, with what they were able to do to get the car priced where it was. If that makes sense. Okay. Now let's move on to one of the bigger announcements in automotive history in 2021. And that is the fact that Rimac is taking over Bugatti. Now, I'm only showing photos of Rimac here because this is probably the brand that potentially some of you have not heard of. Shout out to TerraSport. Yasas. I hope you guys are doing well. Good evening to you guys. Rimac is probably the brand that you guys have not heard of. They're an all-electric brand out of Croatia, but they are taking over Bugatti. Rimac now owns a controlling stake of 55% of Bugatti, and although Porsche is going to be owning the remaining shares of Bugatti, and Porsche has share in Rimac, it's not enough to overall dictate the strategy of Bugatti. The strategy is going to be all Rimac. So Rimac will now lead not only Rimac, but also Bugatti. The CEO, Mate Rimac, who is a 30-something-year-old Croatian dude, is going to be heading up the strategy. Shout out to Brian Brooks with the 50 stars. My man. Thank you so much. Appreciate that. Now, we got a couple quotes from the fine folks at Rimac here. talking about this merger, talking about what potentially this could mean for Bugatti in the future. Quote, Bugatti and Rimac will both continue to exist as respective brands, retaining existing production facilities and distribution channels. Stop for a second. That's a really important quote. Because what a lot of people thought that with this merger, they would just get rebranded versions of Rimac cars as Bugattis with better interior, and that's not the case. Mate Rimac is saying that these brands will continue to exist as separate entities. They're different vehicles. They're different brands overall, right? Excuse me. Bugatti Rimac represents the company that will develop the future of both Bugatti and Rimac vehicles by joining resources and expertise in research and development, production, and other areas. So the Bugatti Rimac brand is such so that they can help each other. It's not so that they can copy each other. This isn't General Motors, okay? Now, obviously, it's just hearsay until we see otherwise, but I'm a glass half full kind of guy, you know what I mean? Rimac continues to say that Bugatti is more focused on heritage, craftsmanship, details, quality. Rimac is more focused on technology, geeky stuff, data. It's like having the same company, a very cool analog Swiss watch with a combustion engine and an Apple Watch. And that sentence is really important too. Let me read that one more time. It's like having, in the same company, a very cool analog Swiss watch with a combustion engine and an Apple Watch. Now, by them saying that sentence is sort of kind of giving us some insight to the fact that the combustion engine is going to live on for a little bit for Bugatti. They're not just going to fully convert to electric. This isn't the end of the big engine Bugattis as we see it, right? Because the fact of the matter is, the person that is interested in the Bugatti is looking for something that is opulent, looking for something that is top of the top, looking for something that is the peak. And to a degree, a big engine provides that. Now, imagine that big engine with some Rimac electric motors attached to it. Imagine the performance potential of a W16 with Rimac electric motors. That actually blows my mind to think about, like, what the 0 to 60 of a car like that could be, what the performance around track of a car like that could be, what the feel of acceleration of a car like that could be. And it's a big step for Rimac. Remember, Rimac as a company has 3 big investors right now other than, themselves. Number 1, Porsche. Number 2, Volkswagen Audi Group. And number 3, Hyundai. Hyundai has actually invested a substantial amount of capital into Rimac. Now, it's important to note that the most is Porsche. So the company with the biggest stake in Rimac is Porsche, and as a result, the future vehicles that we'll see coming out of Porsche that are electric are heavily influenced by Rimac, first of which will be the Macan EV coming soon. But this partnership is pretty huge. Rimac is going to be taking over Bugatti. They're forming Bugatti Rimac, and Rimac is going to be setting the tone for what will be the future of Bugatti vehicles, and I'm excited to see what that future holds. Now, this was no secret. We knew that something was in the works with Bugatti and Rimac. We didn't know it meant that Rimac was going to be dictating everything Bugatti was going to be doing, but we thought that there was a potential that they would just be sold, or divisions of them or parts of them, or Bugatti would buy Rimac. It was one direction. We didn't know which way it was going to go, and it went this way. And I kind of like it. I'm in for it. I live for it. I think Rimac is a great company, and I think they have the foresight to understand what a company like Bugatti could look like and could do in the future. I think it's going to be really exciting. But the last vehicle we got to talk about, it's a race car, and it's pretty spicy. This is the Peugeot 9X8, and this is the hypercar entrant for the French automaker that will fight Glickenhaus, that will fight Toyota in the Le Mans hypercar class, and will fight for the overall win in the Le Mans class. Now, we started with the interior because the exterior is probably one of the most shocking things you've ever seen on an LMP1 Le Mans hypercar style vehicle, and you'll see what I mean in just a second. This car looks like no other race car you've seen in the top form of motorsport. It is missing one distinct feature, one large piece, and there it is. There's no rear wing. Now, if we talk to the Stellantis Motorsport director, Jean-Marc Finot, he says, quote, "The absence of a rear wing on the Peugeot 9X8 is a major innovative step. We have achieved a degree of aerodynamic efficiency that allows us to do away with this feature. Don't ask us how, though. We have every intention of keeping that a secret as long as we possibly can." I'd love to see the underside of this car. But that is the biggest thing, guys. You're looking at something that for the first time in recent LMP1 history that doesn't have a large wing. You're looking at something that for the first time doesn't have one of the hallmark features of a top spec Le Mans car that we're so used to seeing, that big fin that leads into a massive rear wing. This doesn't have it. It forgoes that for a sleeker design that'll likely benefit it in the top speed. And it also means that this car probably has an extensive aerodynamic floor and leverages lots of channels in order to generate the downforce it needs to continue to succeed. And if you look at that roof scoop as well, it has a pillar that goes all the way down. It's interesting to see where that funnels. Is that just a roof scoop, or are there also some aerodynamic elements there as well? Now, what's powering this thing is a 2.6-liter V6 petrol engine that on its own makes 671 horsepower. Add to that 268 horsepower of electric motor, and you get for a pretty positively nasty machine. Peugeot says the gas engine works to drive the rear wheels, and the electric engine works to drive the front wheels, making this all-wheel drive, hence the X in the 9X8 name. Though Finot didn't elaborate what tricks Peugeot has used to replace the downforce, it's safe to assume that there's a really, really smart diffuser under here, 100%. Michael says this car is hot, hot, hot. I love that it doesn't have a wing and uses the floor and diffuser instead. We get great solutions when we ask engineers to simply solve problems without significant regulation. And that is the point of the LMP1 class. That is the point of the hypercar class, to innovate and to provide features that we start to see in race cars, but then eventually trickles its way down to road cars. That is the reason why this class existed. That is the reason why Le Mans overall has been around. It's meant to not only provide an incredible race, but also dictate some of the engineering that we then see in our road cars. It's the reason why Toyota's budget for the Le Mans hypercar class comes out of their R&D. It does not come out of their marketing budget. It's because they're able to leverage that tech, that understanding, the features, the things that they develop in their road cars. They were able to perfect the reliability of the hybrid drivetrain thanks to the extensive use of their race cars hybrid power plant. And it's no different here. You're totally right, Michael. Totally right. So this car has a 7-speed dual clutch and a 900-volt electric motor that drives the front wheels. And like I said, it is going to be taking on Toyota and Glickenhaus in the top spec of the Le Mans hypercar series, but it'll also be taking on Porsche, Audi, Ferrari, Acura, and all these other companies that will be competing for that #1 overall spot. So with that, guys, we got through all the car news today, and we did it in an hour. That is faster than I thought we would. So as we so often do, let's do a quick recap of all of today's car news so that you guys have everything you need to know to be up to speed. Number 1, the Ineos Grenadier. The interior was unveiled today, and it looks like the 90s in 2021, featuring things like a 12.3-inch Apple CarPlay and Android Auto touchscreen, Recaro stain-resistant seats, drain plugs, 2,000-watt AC converter to juice up electric tools and such, and glass roof panels. This car brings a nostalgic 90s experience with all the 2021 features and equipment that you love to see in a modern car. Now, this thing will be available here in the States, and it is powered by BMW engines, either a gasoline-powered B58 that makes 281 horsepower, 330 pound-feet of torque, or a diesel B57 that makes 245 horsepower and 406 pound-feet of torque. These things have permanent all-wheel drive with a 2-speed transfer case and 3 differentials. The front and rear are e-lockers. The center is a mechanical diff. This thing is serious, and this interior is perfect. It fits the vintage, it fits the mantra of this car to the T, and I could not be more excited overall for it. The second bit of news that we talked about is the Genesis G80 Sport being unveiled. This is like an M Sport rival, like an S-Line type deal. This car has unique bumpers with bigger vents, unique 20-inch wheels, red front calipers, 3-spoke steering wheel, aluminum and carbon fiber finishes in the interior, and a 3.5-liter twin-turbo V6 that makes 375 horsepower and 391 pound-feet of torque, mated to all-wheel drive. Now, moving on from there, you have a Golf R wagon. This is a 315 horsepower, 310 pound-feet of torque, 7-speed dual clutch, 4.9 second to 60 drift mode having station wagon that has 60 cubic feet of space with the seats down. This will not be coming to the United States, but it came out. It is car news. It is stuff that you guys need to know, and it looks terrific. So why wouldn't I show it off? No reason. Speaking of vehicles that will come to the United States, this is the new Kia Sportage, available in multiple different configurations, and we don't know specifically which ones will be coming to the States, but we have a rough idea. Available in long wheelbase and short wheelbase trim in gas and diesel. We will likely see short and long wheelbase form. If I had to bet on just one of them, I'd say long wheelbase with that turbocharged 4-cylinder engine that makes 177 horsepower and 195 pound-feet of torque. Now, the Kia Sportage is available in some regions with a 6-speed manual, which is hilarious. But new to the Kia Sportage is electric control suspension, which is a continuous damping control in real time. Think about it like a magnetic ride control that you would get in something like an Escalade Tahoe Yukon, but in a smaller segment of vehicles. The first time we've ever seen this sort of continuous damping technology in something that wasn't $50, $60, $70, $80,000. In addition to that, it has a 12-inch touchscreen with a 12-inch instrument cluster to create for sort of a 24-inch curved panel on the inside. This thing is the closest thing we'll get to a French vehicle in the United States, plain and simple. Moving on from there, we got the swan song, the decade-ending Aventador. This is the Aventador LP 780-4 Ultime. 600 of these will be produced, 350 coupes, 250 roadsters, and they all will have a 6.5-liter V12 that revs to 8,700 RPM, makes 770 pound-feet of horsepower, and 531 pound-feet of torque. That is 10 horsepower more than the SVJ and a similar power to weight thanks to 55 pounds of weight saving. This car does 0 to 60 in 2.8 seconds with a 220 mile an hour top speed, magnetic push rod suspension, rear wheel steering, carbon ceramic brakes, new front bumper with active splitter and flaps, and a rear wing with 3 positions available. This thing looks dynamic and is a great swan song for the Aventador. Ben asked what the future was, and Lamborghini did confirm that the future for the Aventador would still involve the V12, but it would be with some electric power. Now, the reason for that is to be able to increase the performance and the efficiency without muddying that V12 with some turbos. So love that direction, and I'm excited to see what the next generation of Aventador provides. Moving on to Rivian, RJ Scaringe, which is the CEO of the brand, posted some photos of Prime vans that are done and ready to be shipped for testing. So we will start to see these soon. Amazon has ordered 100,000 of these vans from Rivian, and the first 10,000 are set to be delivered this year into next, with the remaining 90 over the next 8 years. There they are. These are the 8 vans that are starting to be shipped, so get ready to start seeing these soon. Amazon has invested $700 million into Rivian, which has helped them produce a dedicated bespoke electric vehicle that has Amazon branding everywhere except for one place on that side skirt where you see powered by Rivian. Moving on, BMW has released a new version of the 2 Series Coupe. This car is 4 inches longer, 2.5 inches wider, and 1 inch lower than the current generation. With a 3 Series interior, it promises to be a nicer place to be when you're inside the vehicle, and it also is a stiffer, more better driving experience, is what BMW says. 12% more torsional stiffness in this model. Now, the base 230i is a turbocharged 2.0-liter turbo 4-cylinder that makes 255 horsepower, 295 pound-feet of torque, does 5.5 seconds to 60, and costs $36,000. But if you want that top-spec M240i, you're looking at a 3-liter inline-6 twin-scroll turbo that makes 382 horsepower, 369 pound-feet of torque, 8-speed auto, 4.1 seconds to 60, costs $48,000. Both of those models will be available in rear-wheel drive or all-wheel drive, but manual is not available. All of these cars, as of right now, are auto only. Moving on to something that is not auto only, we got the Lotus Emira coming in at around $70,000 to $80,000 and being slightly smaller than the Evora, this Lotus draws an amazing middle ground in both pricing, in both size, and capability. This car has two available engines, the first of which is the M139 AMG engine found in the GLA, A-Series, and CLA. In the Lotus Emira, it makes 360 horsepower, and it only is mated to a dual-clutch automatic 8-speed transmission. The other engine that is available is a 3.5-liter Toyota V6 that is supercharged. Same engine you'll find in the Lotus Evora. That engine makes 400 horsepower and is available in manual or automatic. Now, the Lotus Emira has hydraulic steering and a 0 to 60 time in top form capable of 4.5 seconds. But the most important thing to this Lotus overall isn't the looks, isn't the performance, isn't the hydraulic steering. It's the fact that they finally outfitted a proper Lotus product with a proper interior, making it something that you can actually bring into the conversation when you're looking at vehicles like a TT, like a 911, like a Corvette, like a Supra, because it's not something you're making a compromise over. They gave this thing Apple CarPlay and Android Auto. They gave this thing adjustable seats, parking sensors, keyless go, heated seats, etc., right? It's more than just a slab of aluminum and a couple seats. It's actually a nice place to be. And even with all of those features, this thing weighs right at that 3,000 pound mark, making it still relatively light by modern day standards. Available is a Lotus driver's pack, which gives you things like launch control, stiffer suspension, and different tires. This thing will be available in the United States, and like I said, will likely be priced around that $70,000 to $80,000 mark. Moving on, Rimac is taking over Bugatti. Rimac now owns controlling stake of 55% of Bugatti, and Porsche will own the remaining 45%. So Porsche and Rimac will set the tone for what will be the future for one of the most storied franchises in our automotive history. Now, Rimac says that Bugatti is focused on more heritage craftsmanship and details, while Rimac is techie, geeky, and more data focused. So because of that, both of these cars will not be carbon copies of each other. They will be separate. They may leverage similar motors, they may leverage similar pieces, but they will be unique vehicles to each other. So it'll be very interesting to see what comes of those, or that partnership. And then the last vehicle that we spoke about is the Peugeot 9X8. This is the Le Mans hypercar competitor from Peugeot, powered by a 2.6-liter V6 petrol engine and an electric motor. This thing makes 671 horsepower. It's all-wheel drive, and it doesn't have a rear wing. Jean-Marc Finot says the absence of the rear wing on the Peugeot is a major innovative step. We achieved a degree of aerodynamic efficiency that allowed us to do away with a feature. We have every intention of keeping that a secret as long as they can, and it looks pretty awesome. So that is the stream today, everybody. Thank you for tuning in. An hour and 20 minutes in, we got through all the information and we did it together. Thank you, Michael, Ben, Mark, Joe, Andy, Nico, everybody for coming out. Thanks to Brian for the stars and the likes. Appreciate that. Will with the like as well. Andy, Mason, etc. Thank you, everybody, for tuning in. If you guys enjoyed the stream today, don't forget to hit that follow button, like button, share button, comment, whatever you got to do so that you're up to date with all the latest car news. We try to go live every day. Usually we're in the earlier time slot. Today was a little bit different. But yeah, Michael says marathon session today. Great stuff. Thanks, Michael. Appreciate that. We'll see you guys tomorrow